couldn't do worse with Zenobia than he'd done with the core, could he? Boy, if looks could kill. Zenobia was waiting for Renato. She was alone, confident as always. Fire danced at the tips of her claws.
Are you here to surrender?
She seemed as cocksure as he felt. But she didn't know he had the stone.
And I've missed you too, love.
He chuckled. She spotted the stone and bolted without another word.
Finally, Renato caught up to her. He had never seen her scared before. At school, she'd been the determined, brave one. Now her eyes were wide, frightened. He didn't like seeing her this way.
Kill her, whispered the stone.
You cannot win your rebellion without it.
Please.
No, said Zenobia. Not that way.
Oh, they had been so close once. Could he really feed her soul to his demonic gem? But if he spared her, he would not get the full power of the stone. Oh, how could he be the hero he wanted to be? Renato hesitated. Zenobia was his greatest enemy. She was the Emperor's daughter and his greatest general, and the single person Renato least wanted to remove from this world, especially that way. She was holding her arms out before her, hands fluttering, fending him off with hopeless urgency. Nope, she was weaving a spell. He couldn't move. This thing is evil, she said. She slid the Iblis stone out of its slot in his gauntlet and slipped it into a bag. Maybe we can learn from it. She eyed him with a strange, wry, apologetic look. I missed you too. And before he could move again, she was gone. Learn from the Iblis stone? What did that mean? Would she take it to the palace or to the observatory on the Nexus? If she thought it was evil, she wouldn't want it in the palace. And, after all, it was evil, wasn't it? Maybe I can outrace her to the observatory, thought Renato. Cats can run faster, but foxes can run longer. Renato felt a little sick. Ever since Zenobia had taken the stone from him, he'd felt an ache that wouldn't go away. He missed it. He wanted it back. He needed it back. Why hadn't he killed her when he had the chance? She was the enemy. He hadn't even seen her in 14 years. Why had he hesitated? You're a sucker for an empowered woman. Renato kicked himself. Don't make that mistake again. Zenobia thought the stone was evil. Was it?
Well, yes, but he still longed to have it back.
He'd felt so good killing ravens with it, and yet he'd felt unclean ever since he'd touched it. She confused him. She'd made him want to be a better fox, and then she'd abandoned him, never telling him she was the Emperor's daughter, never contacting him since. But who was she to tell him the stone was evil?
This is quite the view, he thought.
Scientists' toes were pointing arcane instruments at the stone and looking at it through prisms and reflections.
Mine, said Reynardo as he took back the stone.
We need it for science, croaked the toads. So he killed them. He felt better immediately. Smarter, too.
I thought you'd never come for me,
whispered the stone. Then, a far-speaker toad croaked in something like Zenobia's voice.
Reynardo, leave the stone with the toads. It will swallow your soul. You'll kill everyone you love.
That did seem vaguely familiar. But Reynardo had an army to lead, an empire to bring down.
Leave the stone. You won't say that, whispered the stone. It was right. Wasn't Zenobia the Emperor's greatest general? Wasn't Reynardo fighting for the rebellion? Of course you wouldn't want him to have it.
Wouldn't you make a better emperor than Isaac III?
Added the stone. You know what? I would, thought Reynardo. Or maybe he said it out loud. He would go see the council and lead their armies to victory. All he had to do was call them on the far speaker. Ah, damn. Well, wouldn't they be surprised anyway? Ah, the ruins. Reynardo had come there as a kid when it was still the fabulous city of Ubar, before the Emperor's ravens had come to pillage ancient books from its library and destroyed it. Now the rebel council lay hidden underneath the ruins. And between here and there, all these ravens to kill. They deserved it for what they'd done to the city. And the faster we could kill them, the more of a rush they gave them. He thought about Hypatia. Oh, she'd been an amazing rabbit. She could talk to him about
comics and talk to her son about history and battles, and talk to scholars about the ancient tomes hidden deep in the vaults of the library of Ubar. Oh, Renato really missed her. Tried to be nice to Zenobia, not killing her and all. And what did she do? She stole the gem from him and made him kill all those scientists. Next time she'd see. Whispered the stone. Ravens? Renato knew how the stone felt. Each raven he killed gave him a little jolt of pleasure. But he could only kill them so fast, and the pleasure wore off too quickly. Hopefully soon he would face a more powerful adversary. Yes, whispered the stone. The more power your enemies, the more power I give you. I will make you emperor. But not with a bunch of mangy ravens.
Say goodnight, Gracie, said Renato, wondering who Gracie was.
Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good. As he reached the secret entrance, he was shocked to see Zenobia talking with the council. She bore a white flag. "The council has betrayed you," whispered the stone. "Kill them." "What are you doing here, love?" Renato demanded. "Come for the brown muffins?" "She's worried about you," croaked the council speaker. "We all are." "You're not yourself," Zenobia said. Before they could get into the rest of the intervention, he leapt at her. Unfortunately, the council speaker blocked him, so he slew her and the other council members. "I'm not giving up," cried Zenobia as she darted off into the ruins. "I think I just killed the entire rebel council," said Renato. "See how much power they've given you." "But they were on my side, weren't they?" "No one is on your side, except for me." He set sail for the fleet. There, at least, there would be enemies to kill. Unless that was the Iblastone talking. He could never be sure. Anyway, who needed other rebels here? They'd only get in the way. A true hero fights alone after he's got all his friends killed. Don't get ahead of yourself, lad.
advanced technology they always talked about?
Don't look down, he told himself. Don't look down.
The world was so beautiful. Everything was glowing, breathing, alive. Except, okay, the ravens. But the wind was alive, like a million fingers caressing his hair. He'd never felt so powerful. He never felt so sexy. Somewhere down the path would be the Emperor. Renato would slay him, most powerful man in Erda. And the Iblis Stone would give Renato all that power. And he would be Emperor. Then he would set everyone free. At last, he was face to face with Zenobia. She was still unarmed. No fire crackled from her claws. Excellent. Kill her, whispered the stone. He raised his sword for the killing blow. Is this what you really want? She asked. Or is it what the stone wants? Think of the power, insisted the stone. I don't want to kill you, he told Zenobia, his arm still raised. I know, but he could not put the sword down. It wants blood, he told her. I know. Oh, help me, he said. She stabbed herself. Take my blood, she said. No, you mustn't, cried the Iblis Stone. Oh, no! Why did you... He ran to embrace her, and she plunged her bloody dagger into his heart. Why? He said. We'll be together in the halls of the Valiant, she said. I love you, he said. Thank you. And the Iblis Stone screamed, and then it began to glow. It burst into flames. It burned like an ember. And then it was ash that blew away in the wind. And Zenobia and Renato died in each other's arms. He should go back to some of the choices he'd faced before. Maybe there were new paths that had opened up.
like those doors he was opening up all over the map that took him to new treasures and around his enemies. But he'd learned another true thing. Zenobia still had feelings for him. The book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again, faster than before, and he fell. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renardo knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renardo had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage. Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces deep. And then, this Emperor's horrific sacrifices had brought it back to the surface. Renardo wasn't exactly sure how to use the legendary weapon. But surely, there must be some way to do it without provoking another catastrophe. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the Earth? It was more than Renardo could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Renardo couldn't help feeling a bit curious. Was Lapino still waiting to be rescued? No. He was probably drinking champagne with the ravens. Did ravens drink champagne? Did rabbits? Renardo felt oddly thirsty, come to think of it. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? Renardo never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it? Open, says me. The people who had built this castle, did they even know what monstrous weapon lay hidden within their walls? The Sky Ripper could destroy anything it touched, or so the legend said. As the Transcendent Emperor had fought the lost gods, thousands of thousands had died. But Renardo had been through wars. The only merciful war was a short one. Didn't your mother tell you it's rude to stare?
snapped Renato, a little smug.
Renato chuckled. It was the same puzzle. He wished he had his friends here, so he could amaze them. There it was. Skyripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Skyripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. It was a no-brainer. He'd sacrificed his old friend Lapino to get the armature. And the armature was useless by itself, only a series of coils and wheels. War demanded sacrifices, and he would make more before the end. He would have to choose the greatest good, no matter how much it cost him. Zenobia. Well, he would see her sooner or later, across a battlefield or a sword's point before all this was over. He was sure of that. The power was in the core. Obviously, he had to get the core. He looked up at the old trees around him. They were so big and so old. They'd been there before he was born, and they'd be there after he'd passed into legend. Was he confronting his own unimportance? What had got into him? He was no philosopher. Anyway, who cares? He was plenty important. He was a hero, and soon he'd prove it. There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. There were fewer and fewer trees. There were only these huge crystalline growths. Had those been here before? He no longer heard birds except for the feverish cawing of the ravens when they attacked. He couldn't smell the small animals of the forest, the mice and rabbits.
Where are they gone? And he's getting hungry, too. This was an unhealthy place to be.
The 20-sided core made him feel physically sick. Once he had sneaked into a temple of the dark art, and he hadn't liked what he smelt and saw there. This felt like that. As quick as he could, he wrangled the icosahedron into the armature. The wheels began to spin, then glow. The sick feeling quickly spun away. Now he only felt sad. He had lost good friends for this war apparatus.
Maybe Lapino wasn't such a good friend. Yeah, that made him feel better. He carried his prize back to the Farfarer.
Now, he had to make his next move. There was a key Imperial outpost on the Nexus. If this really was some sort of super weapon, he could use it to wreak havoc on the enemy. And if it wasn't, well, better to know that before the final battle. But maybe he should show it to some scientists first. There was an observatory on the Nexus. Maybe he should go there before he fired it. Reynardo had never been much of a student. At Swordfu School, he'd never read the books, just looked at the pictures. And Zenobia. But weapons he understood. His gut told him that the Skyripper would work great. He would use it to take out the Imperial outpost. And what's the worst that could happen? The thing wouldn't work, and then he'd take it to the scientists, right?
Reynardo actually could think of a few things that were worse. But he would make sure they didn't happen this time. Right?
Exactly. As he set out down the path, Reynardo wondered why the parts of the Skyripper had only surfaced now, thousands of years after the Transcendent Emperor had discarded it. This Emperor, Isengrim III, had performed terrible, bloodthirsty rituals to invoke the lost gods. Perhaps that was bringing up lost artifacts. How perfect, then, that the Skyripper would reappear to be his destruction.
And hopefully this time, just his destruction.
Around the room yelling, oh yeah, that's how we do it. It was something he liked to do, but only after he killed all the witnesses.
He was tired of slaughtering ravens. Maybe it was time to test out the new weapon. He turned a knob on the Skyripper. It made strange, mechanical noises. The wheels spun faster. It began to hum.
The Skyripper was following his every step. At least it acknowledged him as the master. But there was no trigger. How was he supposed to fire it? Fire, he said. Nothing happened. Well, maybe it just needed to warm up. After all, it hadn't been fired in thousands of years.
The Sky Ripper was making a whining noise now, and its wheels were spinning so fast he could no longer see them.
Renato had a thought. "Please?" he asked. The Sky Ripper began to glow. Boom! The outpost burst into flame.
Ravens flapped out screaming, wings on fire. The base was his. The far-speaker toad came hopping out.
Renato!
It croaked, sounding like a toad version of Zenobia.
Don't use the Sky Ripper. It will destroy the world.
Yeah, sure it will, cracked Renato. Pull the other one.
If you don't trust me, go see Calaveras.
That sounded sensible. Why did she always have to sound sensible all the time? Oh, it was infuriating.
Of course she would say that. He was supposed to hurry and bring the Sky Ripper to the council so the rebels could actually win the war. But what if she was right?
Damn it. Just this once, he would not let Zenobia get into his head with her logic and her wisdom and her appeals to reason. He was a fox. He'd go with his instincts, and it would all work out like it always did. Oh, he was sounding like a reckless idiot, even to himself. But if there was one thing Renato could never bring himself to do, it was turn back on a decision he'd made. Imperials were flapping and cawing all around the ruins. They must be panicking with rumors flying of the superweapon. Maybe they hoped to find and destroy the base before he could put the Sky Ripper into action. The Sky Ripper was whining and heating up. It would be time to use that energy soon.
If the council knew he destroyed the outpost. He hoped so. He was excited. With his superweapon, they could actually win their battle with the Imperial fleet.
What was Zenobia talking about? This was a fantastic weapon. Ravens burst into flames with just a touch of its killer beam. He was tempted to leave it on all the time, but he didn't want to accidentally slice off some council toad's head or tongue. She'd been trying to distract him. Well, this time, no one was going to distract him.
Hey, why don't you guys fight in groups? Oh, I know, because there's no I in team. Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good. doing spectacularly well, thought Renato. As he headed towards the council chamber, Renato felt everyone watching him.
You've saved the rebellion, said the council speaker. Frankly, we were afraid you'd turn aside to save that idiot Lapino.
Not bloody likely, Renato told them, feeling he was maybe being a bit harsh on the poor mad rabbit.
If you never make sacrifices, he said, you're probably not doing the right thing. The speaker nodded. Are you ready to lead the charge? Let's roll, he said, with grim satisfaction. Renato set sail for the fleet. The Sky Ripper had lost its wine. It was humming now, as if it had taken some time to seat properly. He had always been irresponsible. This time, he'd done the right thing, made the hard decisions. He was a real hero. He hadn't let himself be distracted by old friends or old lovers turned enemies. Finally, he could be proud of himself.
He was ready. So was Sky Ripper. The Sky Ripper had a will of its own. It picked out its own targets and set them on fire.
This was going to be a short battle. He would set the ships on fire if he didn't need them to get to the Emperor. And he wondered if he'd see Zenobia, or if she'd flee. Wouldn't she be proud of him? At least, a bit of respect. He'd become an all-conquering hero.
What's behind door number 2? There was a parchment on a signpost. It was from her.
Every time you fire, you risk the destruction of the universe. That's insane. We surrender.
He'd done it. He'd played chicken with Zenobia and won. He could hear the horns blaring the retreat. She was wiser than he was, that was for sure. But wisdom didn't win battles.
Bogus right by his side. And there was Zenobia, wearing the white robes of surrender. She came and kneeled before him. Why didn't you listen to me? I was trying to save you too. You're the enemy, you said. I was never your enemy, Renato.
And he realized, not for the first time, how much she loved him.
Then she spoke a terrible word and made a gesture with her hand. She stopped moving, covered in frost, and he wondered why she'd frozen herself. Then the Sky Ripper froze, and then, for a moment, he felt very cold and discovered that he couldn't move. The next thing he knew, the sun was a giant, monstrously red. It took up half the sky, and he was in a parched red desert. And then he was on fire.
Oh, again?
But he already had all the secrets he needed. He was sure of that. He must have not used them the right way. What was the best, worst mistake he could make? Probably trusting that traitor Lupino. The book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again, faster than before, and he fell. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage. Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces deep. And then, this Emperor's horrific sacrifices had brought it back to the surface. Renato wasn't exactly sure how to use the legendary weapon. But surely, there must be some way to do it without provoking another catastrophe. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the Earth? It was more than Renato could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Renato couldn't help feeling a bit curious. Was Lupino still waiting to be rescued? No. He was probably drinking champagne with the ravens. Did ravens drink champagne? Did rabbits? Renato felt oddly thirsty, come to think of it. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? Renato never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it?